Howdy doody everyone. It's part 2 of the From Neorg to Neorg series. In the last video we got accustomed to Neorg, we installed it, and we got used to some of the syntax, headings, bold, italic and so on. But in this video I'd like to focus a tiny bit more on workflow. We're also going to learn some new syntax, don't worry, we're going to learn about links. But I'd like to get into customizing modules, understanding, how to read through the wiki. I did say in the last video that we're going to learn about the telescope integration this video, but unfortunately some maintenance work is being done by Max, who's our telescope guy. So a lot of stuff is changing, and I'd rather not make a video about something that's going to be rewritten anyway. So I'm going to postpone the telescope kind of stuff to a later date. It's still going to be there, just not today. So the first thing I'd like to show you is a cool option that I actually forgot about as the developer of Neorg, but I recently found it again when rewriting the documentation generator, and it's very critical for a nice workflow. And this is actually an option in dirman called default workspace. So I think it's about time we enter the wiki section in the Neorg repository, and the wiki houses info about all of the modules. So each module has a set of documentation bound to it within its own Lua code, and that's basically transcribed over to this wiki. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see 3 distinct sections. You'll have default modules, other modules, and developer modules. Developer modules you can instantly dismiss unless you're actually wanting to develop something for Neorg. But these two are the most important. So as the description here says, the default modules section, this lists all the modules that are present in the core.defaults meta module that I explained last video, if you remember. Whereas these other modules are modules that you have to load manually in order to get their features. As you see down here, dirman is not loaded by default because it's part of the other modules. And if you click on it, you'll be taken to its wiki page. Now you can read this overview if you want, but what we care about is the configuration section. And you'll see the first option here is default workspace, and its default value is nil. But the description states it's the default workspace to set whenever new of them starts. And this is especially useful when used in conjunction with the Neorg index command. So let me show you how that works. So over here in my Neorg configuration, where I've defined core.neorg.dirman, right next to workspaces underneath, I can specify a default workspace. So let's do that. And you can set this, oh wow, you can see Codium kicking in. You can set this to notes, which is the name of your workspace. So if you had 2 workspaces here, like other equals, I don't know, my notes, right? You could set the default workspace to other here, and Neorg will basically launch with this workspace enabled by default every time. Now I want to just keep my notes, and I'll have notes here. And once you reload your config, if you enter an empty Neorg instance and query your current workspace by running Neorg workspace without any arguments, you should see that Neorg has automatically put you into the default workspace that you've set, which in this case is notes. Now the awesome thing about this is now you don't have to manually set your workspace every time, and you always kind of have a reference point that you can jump to whenever you're taking notes. So say you're programming and you have a very cool idea, you can instantly jump to the index file of the current workspace by running Neorg index. And that's going to take you to the index.neorg file of the current workspace you're in. And then what you can do is from this index file, which may be populated with links to other files inside of your workspace, you can open up a bunch of Neorg files, and then when you don't want those Neorg files to be there anymore, you can run the Neorg return command, which is going to close all Neorg buffers currently open, and it's going to take you right back to your code, for example. So to show you on a concrete example, I'm going to move to the Neorg Lua code, and you're going to see how this works. So say I'm programming, and I hop on over to some Neorg.lua file, and I'm programming, right? I'm writing stuff, function by function. And then I have a really cool idea, like, oh damn, maybe I could implement something cool for Neorg. So I can run Neorg index. I'm taken right to the index file. Cool ideas. Implement a module, for example, something like this, right? And then when I'm done with it, I type Neorg return, and I'm back to my code. So that's pretty powerful. I'm going to showcase this example again at the end, once we learn about links. Because Neorg return, as I said, closes all Neorg buffers. So even if you hop through many links and open up many files, it's going to clean them up all automatically, which is just really nice. Okay, so now that we have some workflow set up, let's actually learn about to-do items. So to-do items are actually insanely flexible in Neorg because they're not limited to unordered lists. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a bit. But to-do items allow you to mark a state of something. So for example, you could have a list of things to buy, and each of these items like bread, milk and butter can be assigned a to-do status. And Neorg has a lot of statuses which are very expressive that can describe the status of that item. So for example, you can specify that bread is undone, which means you haven't bought it, that butter is done, so it's complete. But for example, you can say that milk is on hold because you actually don't need it now, but you're going to need it at a later date. Or you can set milk to cancelled, which means you wanted it, but you actually don't need it anymore. So let's see these examples in action. I'm going to hop into Neorg and enter my index file where I'm going to show you these examples. So let's say I want to do some shopping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enumerate all of my items normally. So I'm going to type bread, butter and milk. And these are currently regular lists, but we can convert them to a list item by adding a bracket syntax after the modifier. So if I hop on over here and I add this syntax, all of these items are now to-do items, and you can see that they're marked with little X's here. So let's say that I've been shopping already today, and today I've already bought bread. So how do you convert this undone to-do item? It's undone because there's a space between the brackets to a done to-do item. To do this manually, you can come in and convert this item to have an X instead of a space, and that means it's done. But we don't like to do things manually. There's a keybind for this. If you hit Control Space on the current item you're on, it's going to cycle it between 3 states: undone, done, and pending. So if I hit Control Space, it's going to convert it to done. And so I also bought butter, it's also going to convert that to done. There are of course a lot more states than just undone, done, and pending, and each of them has an associated keybind. So all of the types can be seen in the help page. So if you run -h Neorg, it's going to open up the Neorg help document. And in here, you've got a ton of information about all the syntax. But we want to scroll down a bit to the tasks section. Go beneath this example tag, and you'll see all of the tasks here. And it also shows you that you can nest these. We'll get into nesting in a second. So you can have undone tasks, done tasks. You can have tasks that require further inputs. We've got some wrong character here. You can have urgent tasks, recurring tasks, pending, tasks that have been put on hold, and tasks that have been cancelled. Now, in case you want to see which characters make up this syntax, you can run a command called Neorg toggle concealer. And this is going to toggle the iconification, and you're going to see the raw text that's used to build up these elements. And you can now see that each of these to-do items has an individual character that identifies it uniquely. So this is a lot more and a lot more expressive than any other markup format that I've seen, which is very epic. So you can now move over to here, and let's discuss some of the keybinds that are used to toggle to a specific state. Now, a quick note, be sure to re-enable the concealer for this file. Otherwise, it's going to give you artifacts, because we disabled the concealer earlier and it's not going to update. So retoggle the concealer back on and let's begin. So each of the states has a key that's honestly very easy to remember. It's GT and then the unique key that identifies the to-do item type. So if I want to make this task done, instead of just Control Space, which toggles between a few to-do items, I can set it specifically to done by typing GTD in normal mode, and that's going to convert it to done. If I want it to be undone, I can type GTU. If I want it to be pending, GTP, P for pending. If it's important, I can do GTI. If it's on hold, I can use GTH. And for cancelled, you have GTC. But does it stop there? Well, actually no. There's 2 other things that I'd like to show you about to-do items that makes them ultra awesome. The first thing is that these don't have to be ordered list items. In fact, you can apply a to-do state to anything in Neorg. So you can even go up here to this heading, and you can mark this heading as undone. And all of the keybinds work on it. So what you can do is you can not only track tasks, so these unordered list items with an extension are officially called tasks, whereas everything else, this is just an extension to the modifier used. And the reason being is because you can assign meaning to this here, because this can mean whatever you want. If you're writing a novel and you have many headings, you can mark those headings as undone or pending to keep track of which things you've completed and which sections need rewriting, for example. And as I said, this can be applied to any elements within Neorg that has a modifier that begins it. So just keep in mind along the series as you learn new elements, because there are a few that we haven't covered, like footnotes, definitions, and so on. You can always assign them a to-do status to keep track of them yourself if you need to. So is that the end of to-do items? No, it's not, because there's one last thing, and that is to-do item nesting. And this is where like all of the power comes into play, because you can nest to-do items, and when you do that, all of the items react to each other. And well, let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to remove the to-do section from here, and in fact I'm going to convert this shopping to a list of its own. So I'm going to convert this to an ordered list item, but we have one last thing to do, and to illustrate this I'm going to disable the concealer for a little bit so it's easier for you to visualize. In Neorg you can't indent things this way. Well, you can, but this is all a single list. This is a level 1 list item, and this is also a level 1 list item. To nest things, we have to repeat this modifier, and we can do this by hopping in and just adding a second dash to each one of these. And now what happened is now this is a level 1 list, and all of these are children of the level 1 list. So now let me retoggle the concealer, and let's see what happens if I mark this as done. You'll see that all of the children now react and all of them are done. And I can mark this as undone and all of the children react. If I hop on down here and I mark this as done, now the parent is pending because this is done and these two items are undone. So this is by definition pending. If I mark all of these as done, it becomes a done item as well. Now, an interesting thing happens is if you mark this as cancelled, this is still also done because Neorg understands that you aren't supposed to do this. This was never supposed to be completed in the first place, so it's complete. If I mark this as important, this also gets marked as pending because important doesn't mean it's done. It means you should do it as quickly as possible. So let me re-disable the concealer again. If I mark my item as uncertain, something cool happens, because this is now put on hold. Because all of my items are done, and there's only one thing that I'm not sure if I have to do, the top level heading is put on hold, because that's what it means by definition to be on hold. And obviously you can nest even further, so I can create level 3 items. I'm not sure what subtypes of bread I can use. I don't know, like white bread, and then like fitness bread, maybe? Because there's 2 types. And if I mark this as done, you can see everything reacts. It's all a tree, and it's all really cool. Now this can be also done for headings. So if I create a heading that's uncertain, or sorry, that's undone, and I call this heading, and I create subheadings, heading 2 and heading 2 v2, heading 2 version 2. I can type some text. And if I mark this as done, all of these subheadings are marked as done. But only items of the same type are updated. So if I have a list here, it's not going to be updated. Only the nested headings are. So those are to-do items. I hope you go out and use these a lot because these are going to be really useful for tracking things. So now I'd like to move on to the concealer. Because as you saw, there was a broken icon on my thing, and I'd like to change it. Let's just see in action. Broken icon, retoggle the concealer. You can see we've got this weird symbol here. Ideally, I'd just like it to be a question mark, so let's change that. So we need to consult our best friend, the Wiki. If you click this inbuilt modules little section here, you're going to get a drop down of everything, and I like to use this for searching. You click core.neorg.concealer, and you enter the page for the concealer. Go down to configuration and let's see what we can control here. Now this looks like something I'd want to change. Configuration for icons. This table contains the full config set for each icon. For most use cases, the only values that you should be changing are the enabled and icon fields. Very cool. I want to change to-do items, and I want to change the uncertain. So what does it say currently? Oh, it uses this icon. I guess I'm missing a font on my system or something because it renders as well in the Firefox instance that I have. So what we want to do is we want to configure icons, to do, uncertain, icon in that order. So let's hop over to the config and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go over to this concealer. I'm going to specify a configuration for it. And now over here, it wanted to change icons, to do, uncertain, icon. So icons, to do, uncertain, and the icon for uncertain. Now I wonder if there's a nice icon that I could use for this. Uncertainty sign. Oh, that doesn't look good. Acodium is recommending this. Let's just use this for now then. And hopefully, if I re-enter my index file, we should see the new icon now put in place. So what you see is that all of the drop-down menus are just nested tables that you define in your Lua config, and you can kind of just go down these tables recursively until you find what you're looking for. Apart from configuring the icons in the concealer, there are a few other things that you can touch. I don't recommend touching this. don't. Whatever you do, don't touch this. You can change the current icon preset, and you can see the data type here right next to it. So if I wanted to change this into in my config, I would say in the config field, icon preset equals, and then one of these strings. So these icon presets allow you to basically very quickly drop in new icons, and there are 3 built-in ones: basic, diamond, and varied. I'm a personal fan of diamond. This is the best preset in my opinion, which I use for my personal config. Big fan. It's not what you see in the videos, but it's what I use for my own files. It looks awesome. Folds are another big one. I showed in the last video that you can fold headings and that you can fold a lot of actually different items. There are also code blocks that you can fold, etc., which we'll discuss in the next video. But in case folds are annoying to you, because by default I think Neorg is going to fold everything, you can see in the config, the configuration tells you that you can change these values to change how the folding behaves. And you can go into the help files, for example, for fold level start, and I can type H and then fold level start, and I'm taken to the help page for this config option. And as you can see, if it's annoying to you that Neorg folds everything automatically, you can set this option to 99, which is not going to close any folds on startup. So that's it for the config, honestly. It's that simple. You can hop on over to any module you might want to learn to configure, and everything is described in this very simple, parsable format. So you can hop on over, you can see lists and what they're constructed of, the data types of everything. It's just nice. So last but not least, it's time to talk about links, because links are a big deal. So why do we care about them so much in Neorg? Why are they so important? Cool thing about links is that it's a single syntax, right? But there's so many types of these links that you can basically link to whatever the heck you want. You can even implement a basic Zettelkasten workflow using just the inbuilt link types, which I think is crazy. I'll be showing that off when we actually get to Zettelkasten in the future. But for now, let's start off at our index file. And we want to start building up some sort of wiki or some sort of knowledge base. Because right now, if you look at your tree structure, or if I look at my tree structure, currently it's literally just this index.neorg file in my notes directory. And that's kind of weak. I mean, we'd want to have stuff branching off into subdirectories and everything. So I can have many different categories of files, and I'm going to create them here using oil. So I'm going to create a directory called school. I'm going to create a directory called work, and that's it for now. I'm going to paste it and OK, create these items. And inside of school, I'm going to create, what can we create? Let's create biology, just like in the last video. Biology. .neorg and history.neorg. And if I go back up in work, I can have just like a basic to-do.neorg file. Now I hop on over back to my index file, and how do we link to these items? So I gave a sneak peek of this in the last video. To link to only a file, you can use the curly bracket syntax and then the colons in between. So this is a link to my history notes. And you can use the basic syntax, so 2 curly braces, in between you've got colons, and then the path from the current file to the other file. So this can be history, school/history, right? And then I hit enter on this, and it takes me to the history.log file, where I can have some cool stuff here. Right? But these two colons are only for linking to files, and linking to files is boring, let's be honest. So let's learn about linking to elements within the current file. Let's say I have a heading, and this is part of my heading, and then underneath I have another heading with some text. And what I want to do is I want to create a link to this another heading. So instead of using these colons, I can just type a single asterisk, because this is a level 1 heading, and then another heading. And if I hit enter on it, would you know it takes me to that heading. So links are both case insensitive and white space insensitive, which means you can completely omit the white space, for example, here, and it's going to link you to the heading properly. But it is punctuation sensitive. So if I have punctuation in here, I also need to have punctuation in here for it to link me to the heading. And just to prove that it's case insensitive, I'm going to make it a lowercase, and it's also going to point me, after hitting enter, it's also going to point me to the location. And you can link to any item this way. So if this item is, for example, a level 3 heading, I have to convert this to a level 3 to link to it. But what if I don't want to do this? Because that's a bit tedious. I can use the magic char. That's actually what it's called, by the way, the magic char. It's a hashtag, and this basically means link to anything. So go from top to bottom and try to find something that's called another comma heading, and it will in fact successfully find it. You can also link backwards in case you wanted to know. So if I link to my heading, it's going to link me backwards. So you now know two types. You now know the heading, the way to link to any heading of any level, and you also know how to link to any item in general using the magic catch-all character. And the other characters we'll be discussing later as we get into definitions, footnotes, and so on. But what I'd like to show you is what happens if you can't find a link, or if Neorg can't find a link. So if I make a typo here and I try to hit enter, Neorg is going to tell me, hey dude, link is not found. So what do we do now? And it's going to give you a few keys that you can press, and it describes what these keys do. But I'd like to walk you through them. These don't work, by the way. These two do. So F will attempt to fix the link with the current type that it has. So in case this is, for example, just a regular asterisk. So if I move out of here. In case this is a regular asterisk, it's going to, if I just hit F, it's going to search through only level 1 headings and attempt to find a level 1 heading with a name almost close to M heading. So it tries to fix the typo automatically for you. That's what F does. It tries to fix the link by looking for the closest match. But the capital F doesn't limit itself to the type that you gave here. So it will actually look for anything. And to illustrate this, I'm going to type another heading, another comma heading, which it obviously can't link to because this is a level 3 heading, and we're explicitly telling it we want a level 1 heading, which doesn't exist with this name. So it's going, if I try to fix it with F, you can see that it incorrectly fixes it. It fixes it to my heading because that's the only heading it knows of, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted it to link to this. So if you use the capital F, so Shift F, you press that key in this window, it's going to implement the search algorithm with loose fuzzing. And what that means is that it's now going to search everything in the whole document, and it's going to find the thing that has the name closest to another heading, and it's going to auto-update it to match. Now another edge case, or it's not an edge case, it's more of a feature, is that if you have the generic catch-all, right, and you use the regular fix link, it's going to fix it by looking through every item, because this is a generic catch-all, so it's going to look through everything and find the closest match. But if you use it with capital F, it's actually going to convert the generic syntax into a strict syntax, which is something you should keep in mind as you're creating or fixing links. Now, I honestly use this very often when I don't want to type out the whole link fully. I just do another, right? Another. I just hit capital F and it automatically just constructs the link for me. And the cool thing is that this fixing algorithm is pretty smart. So you can give it just a few context clues and it's going to figure out what the closest thing is. I'm not heading, for example, is closer to another heading than it is to my heading. So when fixing, it's going to convert it to another heading. So that's link fixing for you. And those are the basic two types. but we can actually go further than this because you can give custom names to your links. So if you have a link, by default, the way this is going to display is it's going to display like this. This is linked to my history notes, and then another column heading is going to be displayed as a clickable hyperlink that you can press. But what I would like to do is I would like to take this heading and put it in here and make the link a clickable item. So the user is going to see link underlined, they're going to be able to click it, and it's going to take them to another heading. So how do we do that? What we can do is we can take this that we have, and we can substitute it for link, right? But now this is going to display as this is another comma heading to my history notes, which we don't want. So after the heading, in regular square brackets, you can type link. And now if you move your cursor away, you can see Neorg has figured out what you want to do. And it's now going to display this is a link to my history notes. And if you hop on over here and hit enter on it, it's going to take you to the heading. So just remember, link comes first, then the description. This is actually the opposite of how Markdown does it, for example. In Markdown, you would put the description first, and then like the location. Here's the other way around. Now, don't be fooled, because you can actually do it the other way around. You can actually put the description first and then put the link location in curly brackets. But this is now marginally different from a regular link. This is now an anchor. So anchors work exactly the same way as links. However, they now have a new property. Here, what we're doing is we're defining the link location first, which means it's the most important. We care about the location the most, and then we specify the name. Whereas here, we care about the name the most, and then specify the location. So if I put this location to be my heading, right? If I enter on it, it's going to take me there perfectly fine. But here's something cool that I can now do, is that I can come down and let's call this heading, right? And if I come down here and I type try out the link to my heading without the location, this and this are now the same. So if you hit enter on heading, it's going to take you to the same location that this would take you, which is here. So this means you don't have to type out the location constantly. You can just give it a name and then reuse that name many times. So this is called an anchor declaration because you're just declaring it. Whereas here it's an anchor definition because you're actually defining where it points to. And this doesn't have to come first. This can come like second. So like a link to my heading right again. And pressing enter on this is going to first look up this, then find its location, and then take you to that location. So that's anchors versus regular links for you. Links can't do this because they prioritize the location first, and the name is only something that you apply afterwards. Other than that though, as I say, this can be used the same way as a link can. So in case you really prefer having descriptions first and then the locations, you can still use this paradigm as you would a regular link. One last thing with notes is linking to locations in other files. So we saw how to link to another Neorg file. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to link to a location in another Neorg file. Now the thing about Neorg is that it's supposed to be composable and predictable. So can you guess what the syntax for linking to a location to another file is going to be? It's simpler than you think, probably. So inside of your file, what you can do is you can say this is a, and now we're going to define the link location in a bit, link to my history notes, right? How do you do this? Well, first we need to define the location, the file that we'd like to link to, which in this case is going to be school/history without the Neorg extension. But if I just hit enter on this, it's just going to take me to the file, but not to the heading. For it to take me to the heading, I define the heading afterwards. So some cool stuff. And now if I hit enter, it's going to take me directly onto the heading in history.neorg. And link fixing works exactly as you'd expect. I can hit F and it's going to fix the link in that other file. Generic catch-alls also work. All of the links actually work with this regular file prefix. There you go. So now we can create a basic tree and we can link to other files. So I can call this, for example, school and then work. Because remember, this is your index file, so this is where you're going to have your links to other files. This is your entry points into your notes directory. And then in school, I can have history. And I can actually embed the link directly into the heading title. So I can do school history, and then I can name this history. And then underneath, I can create a link. If I just create like a link to like World War I, right? World War II. I can have a link that goes school history, World War I, and school history, World War II. And there you go. Now hitting enter on these is going to take you to the respective heading in the file. And the same thing for work. So I'm going to go into my work to do, for example, team project, right? Talk to Jeff about deadlines. And then uncertain, I'm going to make an uncertain item and I'm going to say, can we ship a beta, right? And then lower down, I can ask, tell Frank he's doing a terrible job. And then I can link to this team project from within here, work to do, right? Team project. And there you go. Oh, by the way, you omit the brackets here whenever you specify a location. This isn't actually part of the title. This is only the title here, right? So when you specify a link, you only do it like this. And there you go. But also just for consistency's sake, let's do a file to work to do and call this work. And there you go. So we've just made a basic index file and all of these links jump to their respective locations. Also, you can use Control-O to get back to where you were previously after jumping. So now you know how to jump back and forth. Editor Viro, hopping in here to say something real quick. I realized that in the recording I didn't show off the most basic type of link, which is just the URL. Because if you don't supply any prefix inside of your link and you just start typing, it's going to be treated as a link. And you can obviously assign a name the same way you would assign it to any other link. But a note here is that you can't apply a file to it for obvious reasons, I would say. So just keep that in mind. There are URL links as well. And hitting enter on the link is going to open up your browser instance, whatever it is you have your browser set as, and it's going to open up the URL. So I think for links, that's about it for now. This is a very nice, gentle introduction into all of the configurations that links can take on. The more advanced links, they don't make sense to introduce now. They're only really useful when you put them in context, right? So when we're going to start working on a Zettelcast and workflow in a few episodes, I'd like to introduce it then and there so you kind of have that nice wow factor. So in the next episode, what I'd like my focus to be is automation. So we have a basic workflow. We know how to take some rudimentary notes, and we know how to use Neorg as like a lightweight note-taking tool. And for some people that's enough. Like if you're just writing a basic wiki, you don't really need all of the features that Neorg provides, and that's fine because you don't have to use all of the features that Neorg provides. You can just use it as a VimWiki alternative or whatever you'd like to use it for. But in case you'd like to level up your effectiveness at note-taking and organizational stuff, it's really nice to have automation. So we've spent a good chunk of this episode writing out this index file, but spoiler alert, you can have Neorg just automatically create this index file for you. All that work for nothing, isn't it? So in the next episode we'll be looking into that, and I'll also want to introduce the journal module in the next episode, where we'll take some diary entries, right? Diary notes, if you can call them such. But for today, that's going to be it. I know this video is pretty long, and if you're still here, congratulations, right? If you're still not asleep, then also congratulations. But I hope that with this video and with all of the detailed information that I gave you in this video, you're going to be just that bit better and just that bit more proficient in Neorg. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for the support on the last video, by the way. It was very heartwarming to see the comments and everything. And I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!